Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Self-Love series with me, Cassatiga. On today's episode, it is all about relationships, and me and Muka are going to be going over the 14 things we've learned in our 14-year relationship. Now, those that know us probably have run through their minds that have been together longer than both of us have, like, what do they know? We are not at all claiming to be experts. This is just from our experience in our relationships, things that we've learned. And so, again, that's what we're going to be going over in this episode, and hope you like and enjoy it. Okay, so we are here and we are making dinner tonight. It's something we started doing a little more recently, of cooking dinner together, and it's something we've really liked to do. So we've done that for a little while now. Every time we've made dinner, we try to do it together. So we're doing pizzas today, so we are going to just get into it, and while we do that, just talking about the different things we've learned through our relationship. For those that are a little bit newer to knowing Muka and I, as you already know by now, we're talking about the 14 things we've learned in our 14-year relationship. And just to kind of preface that, 14 years, that is through high school. We met as sophomores in high school, so high school sweethearts, through him going off to college, having a long distance relationship through that, and then also long distance relationship through him serving a 2-year mission, and then 8 years of dating, and then 6 years, almost 6 years now of being married. So it's collectively all of the things through that time frame that when we sat and thought about it, different things that we've learned.
Am I just chopping these up like really small ones, like how we usually do, or do we want like those long?
No, you can do smaller. Maybe not like as
We'll work through it. So I guess one of the things that I've learned is organization. And I feel like I always thought that I was an organized person overall. Like I like to be tidy and have things like in order. That's until I really got to know my wife, because she's got me organizing on a whole nother level. Yeah, I'm the type that will have my clothes folded and put away. Now I organize my closet, color coordinating. Everything in our house has its place, and I feel like even when I'm doing the dishes, I feel like I've got eyeballs watching me, making sure that specific things are put in specific places. Which is not a bad thing. It's not a complaint. I think
what
it's
you're
coming
saying
off
is
like
something
a
you've
complaint.
learned is it's okay to pick up good new habits that your spouse has that you didn't have before.
Yeah.
Love it. I feel like for the first thing I can think of, so saying 14-year relationship, we've kept the relationship and we've worked hard to have it be that way through the 14 years, but it wasn't all easy. There was several breaks and breakups in those times within the first 3 years of our relationship, really, which was through high school and starting college. And so something I thought of when thinking about one of the things I've learned would be from my mom, advice that she gave me, and that was throughout relationships there's going to be situations that happen when you are hurt or things like that. But knowing that if you are choosing, because it starts with a choice, if you're going to choose to stay in that relationship and make it work with that person, that from that point on, if that's something that you guys are trying to work through, you cannot bring that up in future arguments. If you choose to stay through whatever it is that you go through, that then is something that you're accepting and you are letting go of in order for you to move forward in the relationship, because it's not fair to the relationship that you are choosing to stay in, and it's not fair to the person that is working to be forgiven and have you guys move on past that.
I think that personally, she's the one that has to be that bigger person rather than me, because she's never done no wrong in our relationship. But I feel like that's easier said than done for a lot of people, especially like if you really get hurt in like a pretty serious way. If you decide to stay with somebody and then have to put all that aside and almost like have this amnesia where it's like you just have to forgive and do the harder part, which is forget. I feel like that takes a really, really special person.
Thank you. But it is possible.
Yes.
Without us fully getting into forgiveness, because that's not the topic today, it's possible, but it takes some Jesus and some self-love. So that's something that I can definitely say it is possible, but it's hard. So you have to be willing to do that. And if you feel just like you are not in that place to be able to like physically and mentally accept it and move on and not bring it up, then I don't think you are in the place to continue trying that relationship. I think that at that point, the concern and the relationship you should be focusing on and trying to strengthen is with yourself, which ties into our third one, one that Muka will talk about for a sec while I put the sausage on the stove.
When we were in our dating years and we had our ups and downs,
Meeting at 16, still figuring yourself out.
through that, I think a big turning point for us in our relationship, we both together decided that if we were going to work out in the long run, that we both definitely had to be okay with being by ourselves, if that makes sense, and not being so dependent on one another, because we were definitely kind of obsessed. Like our whole world revolved around each other. That's cool. But one of the things, like I said, that was crucial for me to learn was that I needed to be independent on my own. And we both agree that we both couldn't just rely on someone else for our happiness. And we couldn't rely on a relationship with someone else for that gratification that we should be able to find on our own.
Self-love is a huge part of having and being in a relationship. We've kind of talked about that on previous episodes. But like I said, the first 3 years of our relationship, it was pretty rocky and off and on. You're talking about ages 16 to 19. I'm not good at math.
16 to 19.
So 16 to 19, you're still mature, figuring out the type of person you are, what you want to do in life. You go from being in high school to no longer. And so it wasn't anything like through that phase, we went through times of like breaking up. And when coming back into the relationship, choosing to continue it, it wasn't something that either of us even thought of at the time of like, in that time of not being together, needing to focus on self-love. But it was something that in that time of us apart, at least for me, that made a huge that played a huge factor in staying in that relationship, because I saw when we were separated that he put priority on himself to like improve himself, because he knew that's kind of like where I was and what I was trying to do and what I wanted to do, and he respected that and was doing that for himself. So now looking back, we can see that we are only where we are now because going back into that relationship, moving on and continuing it forward, wanting it to be better than it was before, we knew we had to have that self-love with ourselves. So when we went back into the relationships, it wasn't about keeping tabs on each other, having to be together every single second. Like we could live separate lives, and then when we were together, it was great. And so
And I feel like our time when we spent together was just that much more better because it was like it gave us something to catch up on. Like, what have you been doing? Like,
Yeah.
how's life been? Like, not like how's life been, but it was
Yeah.
almost like we had something to talk about
Yeah.
in regards to like stories to share because we didn't necessarily know like what each other was doing for the
Yeah.
past like week.
And I think it's healthy to be that way. I mean, don't get us wrong. Like, we truly are best friends and we love to be together all the time and do stuff together whenever we can. But at the same time, we know that healthy relationships also require being able to have separate interests and hobbies and things like that you can do and be apart and not feel like you are struggling. Okay, so with the next one, I think we're at number 4. That I would say was one of the things that I thought of when thinking about different lessons I've learned is how you really have to be mindful in putting priority on the time that you do spend together. Like for us being married, it's a big thing to, life can get busy with jobs, things like that. So being mindful and like sitting down and planning when we are going to set aside time that we're going to have no other distractions and just be together and spend time together. And so that's something that I've learned is a big deal when you are together, making the most of the time and just making it special to be with each other, because I feel like it does get hard with life and we don't even have kids yet. So I can only imagine how much harder that is. But that is something that I've learned and I think is a big important thing to kind of keep things going.
Yep. Not
That
much more
is what
to
it
add to
is.
that.
Sometimes when you guys as couples end up doing things, I think women can easily feel like that's just another thing that they have to plan and make sure it's carried through. And so I think it makes all the difference to share that and equally both putting forth effort to plan a night where it's just the two of you and both fully being involved. Wow, I had never used that.
I saw it and I was like, you know what? That thing's moving when I press the button. Maybe that's perfect. That's
How
what it's
cool
for.
is that?
Worked out. So yeah, spend time together, right? Agreed. Number 5. For me, I found out pretty quick that there was more to life than just football. Football was my main priority growing up, sports, and I was just your typical jock. And so finding new interests really opened my mind up to different hobbies that I never knew I'd be interested in. And they've been like literally life-changing. And I think it's been exciting for our relationship too, to find new things for both of us.
That could be like a new foreign thing for people to hear. So for them to know, like, why do you think that finding individual hobbies and interests is important?
For me, at least, it makes me feel like I have something to learn. And when I'm learning something new, it forces me to stretch myself. And it forces me to kind of push myself to limits that I never really knew were there. The only reason I never knew they were there is because I never really opened my mind to the possibilities. Like, for example, I went snowboarding for the first time 2 weeks ago.
In our whole life.
In the whole life, lived in Utah for so long, never been snowboarding. But that was like the most humbling thing I've had so far as an experience, because I suck at it. But that feeling of sucking at something, I'm the type of person that it motivates me to get better at it, just for personal reasons that I want to accomplish something that I've never done before.
I love that, because I think when you were saying that, it made me think of relationships and kind of what our last one we talked about, how it can almost sometimes feel like you're in a rut sometimes in a relationship after you've been together a while, because you feel like it's just so the same. I don't know how else to explain it. Where you feel like you need something new to kind of like light that fire. And that could be where it can like turn wrong for some relationships, because it starts with that feeling, which I think is normal, but then understanding that what you use to get out of that rut and feeling, and how it is helping improve your relationship and strengthening it in a healthy way. So I think when finding like a hobby, it's something that helps that feeling, because I feel like naturally as humans, we want to feel like we are accomplishing something. I think just completing things, if you think of like our growth at all different stages and ages of our life, there's different milestones kind of that we do to help us feel accomplished and good about ourselves, because it's something new that we did and tried, and through applying and practicing, we accomplished it, whether it's graduating school, doing sports and getting better, winning games, getting a new job, excelling at it, getting promoted, all those different things. And in a relationship, I think it has to be the same, but that's why self-love is important, because sometimes it's not necessarily that anything is wrong in your relationship other than you as individuals. You know?
I think in regards to self-love, that's how you can learn to love yourself more. Like, I feel like when you try new things,
right,
you gain a better appreciation for yourself, because you're able to accomplish things that you never thought you could.
It just naturally makes you feel good about yourself.
Yeah, it's good to push yourself to new limits that you never knew you could
And
reach.
so I think doing those things, it just makes you, like he just said, feel better about yourself and as a person. So when you're doing those things, you're going to show up better in outside relationships, because the relationship with yourself, you're feeling good. Period, huh?
Amen, sister.
With all of that, like, not only do we believe that like finding your hobby as an individual helps you as a person, so then you better show up in your relationship. I think also knowing that you could do the same as a couple, like that your interests and things that you want to do will change through the course of your relationship, and that is fine and normal and can be fun and open up all different possibilities for your relationship. Side thing I want to throw in is just keeping in mind those hobbies, and that they are things that help you grow and feel better in a healthy way. So healthy new habits. So anyways, like with us in this, I mean, with starting out as with Muka's hobbies, he's had more changes of hobbies than I have, but I think all wives can understand and know that that's a husband thing, to have so many different interests and want to try different things, but not only try them, but invest a lot of money in those hobbies. So, and I'm so lucky that my husband picks the most expensive hobbies, I swear, on the planet. So it all started from like being engaged right before being married. And I don't know, did you just start watching stuff on YouTube? Like videos? Because he wanted a camera, like specifically the GoPro. They had just come out at that time, so it was the first version of it. And he wanted a GoPro to take on our wedding, or on our honeymoon, because we had already planned our honeymoon to go to Bora Bora. And so he was like, we need to take this camera.
You can't go to Bora Bora without a camera.
It's an underwater camera. So we need it. And I was like all about it, about documenting it. Like that's something I'd always loved and liked, was watching like cool, cute couple videos. So I was like, I'm all about it, like documenting the memories, you know, and the trip. So that was the first thing we purchased.
I think it was like $300 at Target.
Right. Literally the next morning after our wedding, right before we hopped on the plane, went to the airport, we stopped at Target and bought the GoPro.
Obviously, that turned into us now running a wedding videography business. And I think that something to note is that she is super supportive in whatever I'm trying to do. And I think that's that has everything to do with what we're talking about here. Like when you have new interests, you never know where those interests can lead you. Like you obviously have to be smart. Like you can't be like skipping the mortgage to go and buy new guns every month, even though I wish I could. Yeah, I think the fact that she's so supportive in these interests that I am beginning to be passionate about, it leads us down to places where we never thought we'd end up. Like being business owners, like that was never in our plans. And here we are.
Well, these didn't work out very well.
Yikes. This would look good on steak.
But it's fine. Not every hobby you're going to want to do is something that you want to like quit your day job that provides for your family. and fully pursue. I think just talking about supporting a hobby, a husband's expensive hobby, we were kind of talking about it today. I think what it comes down to, as the other spouse, is understanding your spouse and their need of why they're wanting to, like, what their interest in that. I think it all comes back to intent. What your intent is, your like why you feel that specific hobby is something that is worth investing money that could go towards your family for. So like, for instance, this is just us personally, and like for me as a wife, why I felt okay with these specific things, because I know, again, that these things could possibly be abused. When it came to cameras, the thing that helped me to be like, okay, let's go buy, even though we just bought a freaking GoPro, let's go buy a Canon camera because your GoPro's not enough, which we bought two or three, and both of those are lost. But anyways,
GoPros, not the Canon cameras.
The reason for me in his intent of why he got into that hobby and why it felt okay for me is because we wanted to be able to document important things in our lives to look back with our kids. In our times, it was like parents that did it was on big like cameras, like video recorders. What are they even called anymore? Video cameras,
Camcorders?
Right? Camcorders. There it is.
My mom had one and it was great.
Yeah, and so did my dad. So like recording those things, but I feel like more modern times now, like cameras are a big thing. So he wanted to get those to record our trips and things like that. And from him recording our trips, posting them on social media, the little videos he would put together, that's when a photographer friend of ours reached out in needing help for a wedding that same week and seeing if Muka would be interested because she thought he had talent based on the videos he would post. So that's what I'm saying. And depending on what your spouse comes to you about in a specific hobby, what's the intent and the why behind it? How is it going to help with the most important thing, which is your marriage, you as a person, and your family. Now he's got his new hobby of snowboarding. We haven't got the why on that yet, of why that's okay, but it's something that's made him happy. It's challenged him.
The why is, why not?
On that note, that's it for that one. Crispy. I can already tell that yours is low quality.
What's the
Next one? Number 6. Kind of goes straight in from our last one, number 5. In the importance of support as a couple and in a relationship. For richer or for poorer, for better or for worse, through thick and thin. And so kind of talking about that and relating it to our relationship and how I came to learn the importance of that is because that's something that I struggled with. Because when it came to, like, for example, I was in a place with my job where I really hated my job at the time. And it stressed me out. It just didn't make me feel like good ever. I was just always upset when I was at work. And when I would come home, I carried that stress. And I came home one day for lunch. I had only been at work for like 2 hours. And I came home and he was on like a swing shift at that time. So he was still home and hadn't went to work yet. And he asked me how work was. And I just like broke down crying and just talked about like how stressed out I was at work and how I just hated my job and wasn't happy. And like without even a thought or hesitation, he was just like, well, just go back and quit. Like tell them you're not gonna be continuing working there. Like, it's just not worth it. And like, it meant so much to me, even though I didn't do that because that's just not in my character to do that. It was a really good paying job. I'd been in it for a while. So that thought to just do that, I wasn't ready for that yet. But it put me in a different mind space, just knowing I had his support and that he didn't think it was worth it, which is what he told me. Like, it's not worth it for us as a family for you to continue being somewhere that you're miserable and you're mistreated and you don't feel good. So just knowing that made me feel so good. And I feel like opened up just the possibilities and my mind to look elsewhere for another job, which not too long after that, I ended up getting the job I have now that I love. And it's like, don't have that stress anymore that I had before. Now in our lives, he started to feel that same way where he was at with work. He had been doing videography just on the side. That was something we were doing.
Yeah, I just felt like I wasn't doing the things that I wanted to do, and I didn't have the freedom to do those things like how I wanted to. The job itself wasn't, I mean, I worked with some amazing people. It was just like any other job. Like, it has its ups and its downs, its positives and negatives, but I just felt like it was holding me back from more. I kind of like what we talked about earlier, like when you do the things that you're interested in, it just opens up a door that you never knew was there. And videography was one of those doors that I just never knew I could even open. And once it was open, I just had an itch that was something we needed to pursue.
And so when he started feeling some type of way about his steady, good paying job, I was like, absolutely not. Well, I hope I wasn't like, absolutely not. But I definitely made it clear that I wasn't comfortable of the thought of him leaving, even though I could tell that that's what he wanted to do.
It wasn't like the opposite, but it was like when you came home and you hated your job, I was just like, well, then quit. Like, you don't want to do it, quit. Like, who cares? It could be a lot worse. Like, you might as well do something you like. And then when I came home and I was like, yeah, I think I want to quit, she was just like, okay. And it was like a distant thing where it was like, yeah, you can do it, just not right now.
Right. But then it was something that stayed in my mind, like when I would think about it to myself. And then I just realized that I needed to reciprocate that same support he gave and showed me when I needed it. And just know at the end of the day, I know him enough and who he is. At the end of the day, I had to like put aside my anxiety and my like worry of things that haven't even happened, which is really all it came down to. And just supporting him in pursuing videography.
The next lesson that I've learned, that I think we've both learned over these last 14 years, is that everything just kind of just falls into place when we're doing the right thing spiritually. And we're going to church, we're paying our tithing, we're magnifying our callings in the church. Those things make it so that the rest of our life is it all just kind of falls into place. Go to church. That's a pretty simple one. I don't think we need to like elaborate too much on that, do we? Even though that's the most important one.
Wait, I do. Always.
Okay.
I definitely take that too from our relationship, specifically because maybe this is going to help one person watching that hasn't experienced it yet, but is going to be the time of our relationship where it was long distance, but more specifically of him going on his mission. And that was something that we were going to be like separated because he was going to be serving a mission for our church. And I was just home working. But I feel like because it's not a common thing to see couples make it through a mission in waiting for each other and ending up being married or even staying married. But
it's a 3% chance. I think it might change now, but
yeah,
it's like a 3% chance.
That was the reason why I think we worked out, is that we were on the same page spiritually prior to him going and having that conversation of him going and what was going to happen, like the status of our relationship. I think that's like a big decision, but going into it, you have to be on the same page. And I knew he would be growing, like crazy growing spiritually while on his mission. And I knew I had to do the same in whatever ways I could here at home. so that we could still relate in that way throughout the time of him being gone, and when we would be able to write each other, and when he came home. Our next one, number 8, that I thought of is another one that my mom talked to me about and taught me when we were still dating. And it's something that I still have to remember and apply while we're married. To never assume that your spouse thinks the way that you do or can read your mind. And so in cases where you feel like your feelings are hurt, you feel some type of way about something, you can't assume that they've known you long enough, or because you're together, they should know how you feel and when you're going to feel it. You can't assume or think that. You have to vocalize it, and let that person know.
And I think this is like an ongoing thing. Like, we still are working on this, where it's like, I assume something that you're already thinking.
Right.
And then it doesn't happen, then I get all mad about it. But in reality, that's my own fault for assuming something that you were totally, you didn't even think twice about it.
It wasn't my intent,
You had no idea.
Right.
But yeah, I'm being mad about something that you have no idea.
Yeah, I think I would be shocked if anyone could ever truly master that. But I think just being mindful of it and knowing it, so then when you're in those moments and you're trying to think through things, you remind yourself of that. And I think it helps you to come up out of that.
Okay. So the next one.
Number 9.
Is humility. That's definitely something that I think out of us two, I needed the most work on from beginning of our relationship to now. I was a very prideful person, and that pride got me in a lot of trouble. And I think over the years, as we've both been able to be open in our relationship and listen to each other, give each other the floor when it's time for one of us to talk and really listen into what they're saying, it really stops pride from getting in the way when we actually listen to each other and have the humility to understand where one of us is coming from and thinking about the other's point of view, being more open to it. Even if we totally disagree, like in sometimes you just got to be able to take your wall down and understand that person's perspective and accept it.
Period.
So, yeah.
Ladies watching this, if you're LDS, let that boy go on a mission. Because though he does not come back perfect, he comes back with some lessons on humility. So, eternal perspective. Let him go. Cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, the last one to go over for our little mukbang section is the importance of sharing the load. Huge game changer. I think that's something a lot of women can relate in, that can be a struggle in a marriage or a relationship when you feel like you are carrying a lot of the load on your own. So this section, rather than making you feel worse about it, hopefully just husbands can tune in knowing and how to improve, because I think
Hey,
for
maybe some
us,
wives need to hear it too.
I doubt it, but there's maybe one.
Maybe there's less wives, but there are definitely some wives who maybe they need to hear it too.
Maybe 0.5 out of 10. So anyways, but for example, duties of the house. I know it's like super common that that's just supposed to be something the woman takes over and should do, while the man like provides by making money. In our house, I feel like it makes a huge difference in our relationship, because I don't feel that way, because Muka actively tries to carry the load equally with me. In things like doing the dishes when I come home from work and he's going to be here before I get home, that he makes sure like the house is picked up in whatever visible ways. Just things like that, I think, are little, but go a long way, like doing the laundry. Yeah, I think that is something that I've learned in our relationship that is important, and it's a simple thing, and you would think common knowledge that helps to have a better relationship, but I think is something that's definitely looked over, but it makes all the difference.
I just feel like when you get home, I want just like a free night, you know? Like, I don't want us to like work all day and then spend the first 2 hours being together at night, cleaning and washing dishes and laundry. In an ideal world, like every day, I want us to like get off work and then straight into whatever we want to plan. Like, I don't want to plan a slot in the day that just like,
You don't want our time together to be taken up by doing duties, like house duties.
And if I could do that in
Right.
small portions of the day, I'll do it. Like, I'd rather get those done then, even though it's not going to be like perfect, like how you want them to be done, but at least it's enough to where
Exactly.
you don't feel it bugging you that the house is a mess.
Yeah.
If we want to go on a date.
And that's another thing, like with us cooking, I feel like naturally lately that's been something we've been doing together, is like making dinner together, because as soon as I get home from work, that's what I'm automatically going into doing, is planning and making dinner. And so he would like work, or if he's done with work and he's like checked out wanting to relax, he just like hang out and watch YouTube or something. But for a little while now, that's something he comes in and we both just do it together. And it's fun because it starts our time already as being together and doing something productive, because sometimes it can be hard to be productive when we're together.
I'm ready for dessert.
Okay, we are now just going to get dessert. This is something that we do often and we love to do. And some of our greatest combos have happened in the car on drives. Okay, so the next one, communication. And I feel like that's one that people think is just like common sense, common knowledge. I know that's what I think. But there's a lot of relationships that I know of that is what their underlying issue is they don't communicate. And I just see the issue that can be had when communication doesn't happen. Anyone who knows me, and Muka knows this, I'm the type of person, when I feel any type of way, sad, stressed, super excited, that is my first instinct reaction, is to talk about it, to share it with someone. And that's what makes me feel better.
And I'm totally opposite.
Yeah.
I'll go weeks before I want to voice my opinion. Or not my opinion, I should say, just my side of the argument.
Yeah, and so that would be mine, is just like to think when in doubt, chat it out.
I still take forever to talk, but once we do, it's always the best. It's just my weakness. I'm still trying to work on. Could I get 2 Oreo McFlurries, please? But could I get one of them with caramel? Thank you.
So yeah, it might not be natural to everybody and comfortable, but I think it's very important. Like, even though Muka is completely different and he's not that same way naturally, I know that whether it's big or small, happy, sad, that he'll always listen to me and be there for me to talk.
Thank you. Appreciate it, man.
Wow, they've never done it like this. Do you see how that looks? Look, they just...
Ooh.
Mark Henry, you're detailing the car on Monday. Gosh dang it, I've had enough.
Anyway.
Guys, I'm not a big McFlurry person. Like, I think they're overrated. It's Mark Henry's favorite. So my next one, I feel like when someone in a relationship puts that expectation on the other person to come through in providing the ideal gift or day if it's a birthday or a holiday, and that expectation isn't met by the other person because, again, like I talked about earlier, they can't read your mind. So when that happens and they don't do it because you didn't voice what you wanted or whatever it may be, it can lead to tension and unhappy feelings. So for me, I've always been huge on holidays, like every single holiday. I love them and love to celebrate them. My family's been that way. And when it comes to holidays or things that require gifts, that's an important thing to me as well, because I grew up having that and it's something I loved and always look forward to. So that being something that Muka isn't used to and doesn't do those things the same way that I do, it's not like it's important to him.
It's like the organizing thing. Like we always like gave gifts, but you just took it to another level when I got married, because you guys are on another level. And maybe we're just like, maybe that's more normal than what I'm used to. But I think we did it, just not to that extent.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother topic.
Anyone knows that. I think that's Polynesians, period, compared to white people. It's done differently. They're celebrated differently, 2 different levels. My mom's white, and so we celebrated leaning more towards that way. The best way. But anyways, I think you guys get where I'm coming from. So last year, learning through a podcast I listened to about, it was an episode about relationships. The wife had talked about that, of getting rid of those expectations. And if you want a gift from them, tell them specifically what you want, or even just get it yourself. Or if there's something you want to do specifically on your birthday, then plan it yourself. Me and Muka have done it before. We did it a little bit of a while ago, in like sitting down and writing down like what our ideal day would consist of, like sharing those lists. And then we had days where we would do that person's whole ideal day. And I feel like it was something that was awesome. And I think that's something that could be done on birthdays.
Awesome. I'm just here for the McFlurry. Whoa. Got an Oreo stuck right on the top.
I'm gonna punch you. It could soften that cookie. Woo.
That was rough. Okay, so another thing that we've learned over the years is thought behind being independent. Cass has always been a person that has been independent. Like her whole life, she's been independent. Like that's one of the things that I loved about her when we first started dating, was that she always had a job. She paid for her car, her gas. She would help with the cell phone bill or whatever. She was doing all that at the age of 14, 15, all the way up. She's always just been that type of a person. And I've been independent my whole life, but in a very different way. I'm independent in that I like to just go out on my own and do things without being told to go and do things. But I'm still, when I was her age, I'd be going out doing whatever I wanted to with my friends, but I'd still be the one asking my parents for money for gas, or can I use the car? Like I didn't have no job, no car, no money, no nothing. But throughout the years, I've learned that being independent is super important. And me being with Cass and being able to learn from someone who's always been independent, it's rubbed off on me in a really good way, because now I'm independent, but I'm responsible. I think that's the word I'm looking for. I was independent, but I wasn't responsible. Whereas she was both independent and responsible. So yeah, independent. Be independent. Strive to be independent as a couple too, like in a relationship. Don't try too hard to rely on other people. I think there's value in like struggling if you have to as a couple. Like you learn so much things through the struggle that you wouldn't be able to learn in any other way. But that's all part of being independent, is relying on yourself, right?
That's another thing I think to me, like, just because of my mindset's always self-love, I think independence is another form of self-love, because it comes from not trying to source anything from anything but yourself, and knowing that you can do hard things and you can provide for yourself. And then there's also the side which we've talked about, in like that can get to an extreme to where you'll have to practice humility to a certain point, to accept help in some different ways, and you learn that in a relationship. But I think independence is a huge thing, especially going into a relationship. That like just ties into kind of like knowing who you are and being whole on your own before getting with somebody, and expecting them to provide for you, to provide your happiness, to provide you a home, to provide you a car to travel places. Like, I just think that being independent helps you just help put your best foot forward in being a part of your relationships.
Like I said, I'm just here for the McFlurry. So the last one is the worth of your spouse. I feel like I've learned over time that the more I focused in on the value that Cass brings into my life, the easier it is for me to be grateful for what I have in my life. Because a lot of things that she brings into our marriage, no one else in the whole world can give me that. On a spiritual level, on temporal level, I just find that when I focus in on those things, I focus in on the positives in my spouse, it makes marriage and a relationship that much more sweeter to enjoy. When I'm doing a good thing, she reminds me that I really like how you do that, or I love this thing about you, blah, blah, blah. All those things, So recognize the value in your spouse.
It's like what we've talked about, when you lose sight of your spouse's worth and all the different qualities that they have and they use when showing up for you as a spouse, but it's when you forget those things and their worth that you act in such a way that hurts and affects your relationship. When you really know and understand your spouse's worth, you will treat them as such. So I think that's why it's so important.
Amen, sister. I think you said it way better than I did.
An interesting little trip.
That was.